Spec Ops: The Line. It's one of those games that messes with your expectations in the best way. I remember going into it thinking, oh, just another military shooter, right? At first glance, it looks like your standard third-person cover shooter. You're leading a squad, you've got your guns, sandstorms everywhere because it's set in Dubai, and it all seems pretty straightforward, but as you dig deeper, that's where things start to unravel. The story pulls you in directions you don't expect, and it really makes you question your choices, like seriously question them. What I loved about Spec Ops: The Line is how it uses the setting and the characters to play with your mind. You start feeling like the hero, but after certain missions you're like, wait, am I doing the right thing here? The game gets into some heavy stuff about the horrors of war and the consequences of your actions, which is something most shooters don't really touch on. It's more than just, go here, shoot this. There's a layer of guilt and responsibility that weighs on you by the end. Plus, the gameplay is solid. I mean, the shooting mechanics are great, the cover system works well, and the environmental destruction with the sandstorms is a cool twist. But really, the gameplay is just a vehicle for the narrative, and that's what elevates this game from being just another shooter to something special. You don't see a lot of games that really make you reflect on the violence in that way. Honestly, if you're into games that challenge you emotionally and mentally, while still delivering fun, engaging action, Spec Ops is a must-play. It's underrated in so many ways. People might pass it off because it looks like a typical shooter. Next, we have Remnant 2. If you've ever thought, I want Dark Souls but with guns, this is literally the game for you. The best part is how they mix that tough, Souls-like gameplay with co-op. Like, you're dodging and weaving through boss fights with your friends. What I didn't expect was how varied the worlds are this time around. You're not just in some post-apocalyptic setting. You're hopping between dimensions, and each one feels so distinct. One second, you're in this creepy, gothic forest, and the next, you're in this futuristic sci-fi city battling weird robotic enemies. The variety keeps things feeling fresh. Like you're never sure what the game's gonna throw at you next. Speaking of enemies, oh man, they do not mess around in this game. Every time you enter a new area, you get this uneasy feeling like, okay, what's gonna try to kill me here? And the bosses? Don't even get me started. They're so creative and challenging. It's like a new puzzle every time you face one. You're constantly trying to figure out the patterns, the weak spots, and how to stay alive. It's tough, but in a way that makes you want to keep trying. You know that feeling when a boss wipes the floor with you for the 10th time, but you finally crack it, and you just feel like a god? That's what Remnant 2 is all about. I think what really hooked me, though, is the way the game encourages you to try different builds. You've got these archetypes, right? And each one changes how you approach combat. Like, do you want to be the tanky guy, soaking up hits, or the guy running around sniping from the back? You can switch it up mid-game too, which is great because it means you're not stuck in one playstyle. Next, we have Quantum Break. It's one of those games that had such a cool concept. It was supposed to be this ambitious blend of a video game and a live-action TV show. Remedy Entertainment, who, by the way, also made Alan Wake and Control, really went for it with this one. But despite all the effort, it didn't quite land the way they hoped. Still, Quantum Break was way better than people gave it credit for. First, let's address the elephant in the room, the live-action TV show aspect. So, here's the deal. After every act in the game, you'd get a 20-minute episode of a show that followed the story from different perspectives. Some people thought that was super cool, while others just didn't. A lot of gamers felt like it broke the flow of the game. And, to be fair, not everyone wants to sit through 20 minutes of TV when they're in the mood to game. That decision alone turned off a lot of people. But if you were open to the idea, it was actually a pretty fresh take. The show wasn't bad either. It had some solid acting, including big names like Sean Ashmore and Aidan Gillen. The way your in-game choices impacted the show episodes was also a neat touch. It added this layer of interactivity that you don't see in most games. Now, when it came to the gameplay itself, Quantum Break absolutely nailed the time manipulation mechanics. You had all these cool powers, like freezing time, dodging bullets, and even creating time shields. It made combat feel fast, fluid, and just downright fun. There's nothing quite like freezing a group of enemies in place, unloading your weapon, and then watching the chaos unfold when time resumes. Next we have Alien Isolation. I don't think I've ever played a game that kept me on the edge of my seat like this one did. You know how some horror games throw constant jump scares at you? Not here. This one's all about that slow building tension. You're literally never safe. It captures that feeling of dread from the original Alien movie perfectly. And let me tell you, the atmosphere in this game is top tier. The space station is so incredibly detailed, like straight out of the 1970s vision of the future. It has that grimy, lived-in feel, which just adds to how isolated you feel. The lighting is phenomenal too. I remember creeping through these dimly lit corridors with shadows dancing everywhere. The vibe is so good, you just feel like you're there. And that's half the reason this game works so well. It makes you feel like you're in constant danger. I think one of the coolest things is that the xenomorph isn't the only thing you have to worry about. There's other stuff happening on the station, and it really creates this sense that the world is alive. Well, maybe not alive, but dangerous. I won't spoil anything, but let's just say, some of the other encounters are almost as tense as dealing with the alien itself. Alien isolation isn't for everyone. If you don't like slower-paced games or being super stressed the whole time, maybe it's not your thing. But if you're someone who loves a good atmospheric challenge, and you appreciate a game that doesn't treat you like a kid, you're in for a treat. There's something incredibly satisfying about surviving an encounter with the alien, where you're just like, oh man, I actually made it through that. Honestly, the game is just a love letter to Alien fans. Next we have The Division 2. It's like someone took the best parts of a cover-based shooter, mashed them up with RPG elements, and then dropped it all into a beautifully detailed, post-apocalyptic Washington, D.C. So the setup is simple. The world's gone sideways, and it's your job to bring some order to the chaos. You're an agent of the Division, a group of super-trained operatives trying to hold everything together. But honestly, the real fun isn't in saving the day. It's in exploring, strategizing, and slowly building yourself into an unstoppable force of nature. The game is all about cover-based strategy here. Running into a fight, guns blazing? Yeah, good luck with that. Instead, you're ducking behind cars, flanking enemies, and figuring out how to use your gadgets to outsmart the other side. And those gadgets? Absolute lifesavers. Turrets, drones, seeker mines. You've got a whole arsenal of futuristic toys to mess with, and they're all ridiculously fun to use. The enemies aren't just bullet sponges either. They're smart. They'll flank you, use cover, and coordinate to take you down. There's a real sense of satisfaction when you clear an area because you earned it. Every firefight feels intense and rewarding, especially when you're playing with friends. Speaking of which, co-op is where this game truly shines. Rolling into a mission with your squad, calling out targets and covering each other's backs. It's peak teamwork. Plus, there's something hilarious about your buddy panicking over the comms while you're casually tossing a healing grenade their way. Next we have Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. A game that feels like a love letter to the roots of the series while bringing something fresh and bold to the table. Movement feels like a dance, fluid, fast-paced, and incredibly rewarding when you string it all together. Sargon isn't just your run-of-the-mill protagonist. He's equipped with an arsenal of moves that make traversal and combat a treat. Whether you're wall running, dodging traps, or leaping across massive gaps, there's a rhythm to it that feels so satisfying. And then there's the combat. Let me tell you, it's not just about hacking and slashing your way through enemies. Every encounter demands strategy. You'll have to master dodges, parries, and combos to succeed. Enemies aren't pushovers. They're smart, they're tough, and they'll make you think on your feet. But that's part of the fun, right? When you finally take down a tricky foe after figuring out their patterns, it's such a rush. One thing that stands out about The Lost Crown is how it balances exploration and combat. The world is layered with secrets and challenges that encourage you to look beyond the obvious. It's not just about moving from point A to point B. It's about figuring out how to get there, what's hidden along the way, and how to overcome obstacles that aren't always straightforward. The game constantly rewards curiosity, and every time you uncover something new, it feels like a win. Speaking of obstacles, the puzzles in this game are no joke. They're clever, varied, and so satisfying to solve. You'll be using your brain just as much as your reflexes. Next we have Helldivers 2. Now, this game is a follow-up to the original Helldivers, which had a strong cult following. It's all about cooperative, top-down, tactical shooting, but with a pretty unique twist. It's brutally difficult. However, Helldivers 2 has gotten some hate for being too punishing, or for having gameplay mechanics that can feel overwhelming, especially for new players. One of the biggest complaints is how unforgiving it can be. Friendly fire is always on, which means you can accidentally or not so accidentally kill your teammates during missions. And believe me, this happens a lot. It's a game that forces you to be super careful, and not everyone is down for that level of intensity. The steep learning curve and lack of hand-holding also rubbed some players the wrong way, especially those who were expecting something more casual. Another thing that got some pushback was the game's structure. Missions can feel repetitive after a while, and if you're playing solo, the game is an entirely different experience, and not always in a good way. It's built around cooperative play, so going in alone can make it feel more frustrating than fun. But here's the thing. If you're into tactical shooters and have a squad to play with, Helldivers 2 is an absolute blast. The chaos that comes from trying to coordinate with your teammates while dodging enemy fire and calling in reinforcements makes for some seriously intense moments. The variety of weapons, gear, and strategies you can use makes each mission feel dynamic, and the constant threat of messing up keeps the tension high. Sure, it's tough, but that's also what makes it so satisfying. Next, we have The Outer Worlds. While it didn't win Game of the Year in 2019, it absolutely deserved to be in the conversation. This was Obsidian showing everyone they still had that RPG magic, delivering a game with tight writing, a quirky sense of humor, and a whole galaxy's worth of exploration and moral dilemmas. It was a breath of fresh air in a genre dominated by massive open-world RPGs, proving that sometimes less is more when it's done right. The world building was top-notch. Set in a retro-futuristic galaxy ruled by megacorporations, the game gave you a ton of freedom to explore different planets, each with its own distinct vibe and politics. The whole corporation's run everything setting was dripping with satire, and it really hit home, especially with the dialogue options. You could choose to be a hero, a corporate shill, or just a chaotic wild card, and the game would react accordingly. Every decision felt meaningful, and there were so many different ways to play through the story. The writing was easily one of the game's strongest points, whether it was the witty banter with your companions or the moral dilemmas you faced with every mission. The dialogue was smart and sharp. The characters, like Parvati, who became an instant fan favorite, were charming and well-written. They added a lot of heart to the otherwise cynical tone of the game, and their personal side quests gave the game an emotional core. One controversy was that, despite its great writing and humor, the game's combat wasn't exactly its strongest feature. It was solid, but not particularly deep. Next we have Greedfall. It's this cool mix of fantasy and colonialism. I feel like it flew under the radar for a lot of people, but once you dive in, it's hard to stop. You know that feeling when a game has such a rich world, and you're like, why didn't I hear more about this? That's Greedfall for me. The first thing that really struck me was the setting. It's got this new world exploration feel, but instead of America or something, you've got this mysterious island called Tir-Fradee, filled with monsters and these indigenous tribes who have their own deep culture. Honestly, I think the world building is one of the game's strongest points. Like, there's this constant sense of discovery, and every place feels like it's hiding a secret or two. And the story. It's a classic RPG in the sense that your choices really shape the narrative. I found myself agonizing over some of the decisions, like, do I side with the natives or the colonial factions? Do I negotiate or fight? It really makes you think about the consequences, which I appreciate. It's not just black and white morality either. It's all these shades of gray. I think that's why it kept me hooked. It's a game that rewards you for paying attention to details and thinking about your choices. The companions are super well done too. I love how they've got their own backstories and personal quests, and the interactions with them feel meaningful. I actually cared about what happened to them, which doesn't always happen in RPGs, So yeah, if you're into RPGs with a bit of a twist, Greedfall is definitely worth checking out. Next we have Darksiders 3. It's one of those games that brings back the classic hack-and-slash vibe, but with a modern twist. You play as Fury, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and man, she's got a serious attitude. I loved how her character is all about being fierce, independent, and, well, fiery. She's not here to play nice. What's cool is how Fury's abilities evolve as the game progresses. You start out with her whip, which is already pretty awesome for crowd control and long-range attacks. But then you get these elemental powers called hollows. They're like different forms Fury can take on, and each one changes her combat style. It's super fun to switch between them in the middle of a fight, mixing up your moves to keep things interesting. Plus, the design of these forms, just badass. You've got fire, storm, and all sorts of cool effects that look amazing in battle. The world design in Darksiders 3 is pretty unique too. It's not a huge open world like in Darksiders 2, but more interconnected levels with a lot of exploration. There's a Metroidvania feel to it, where you'll come across areas you can't access yet, and then later, When you've unlocked new powers, you can backtrack and find hidden secrets. It adds a nice layer of exploration without feeling overwhelming. The story is pretty solid too. It's not overly complicated, but it ties nicely into the whole Darksiders universe. Fury's journey is all about hunting down the 7 deadly sins, and along the way, you get some cool lore and moments that tie back to the other horsemen. Next we have Lords of the Fallen. Now here's a game that has an interesting story, but not in the way you'd expect, because I'm talking about the story of how the game itself has been received. Lords of the Fallen is one of those games that came out swinging with big ideas, tried some bold moves, and got, well, a lot of hate for it. And honestly, most of it feels a bit unfair. This game came out in the shadow of Dark Souls, and I mean, it's tough to go toe-to-toe with that. People immediately compared it to From Software's epic series, and fair enough, Lords of the Fallen definitely wears its inspiration on its sleeve. It's got that dark fantasy look, tough-as-nails combat, and a focus on dodging, blocking, and timing your attacks. But here's the thing. Just because it shares a genre doesn't mean it's trying to be a Dark Souls clone. And this is where I think a lot of players missed the point. Where Lords of the Fallen shines is in its own take on the action RPG formula. It doesn't try to be as brutally difficult as Dark Souls. Instead, it aims for more accessibility, which is honestly a great thing. It makes this style of game way more approachable for players who might be new to the genre or just don't have the time to get good through dozens of hours of trial and error. Lords of the Fallen balances challenge with a little more leniency, which is refreshing. The combat itself is actually really satisfying. It's chunky and there's this real weight to every swing of your weapon. It doesn't have the razor-sharp precision of Dark Souls, but honestly, not everything has to. Next we have Ghost Runner. If you haven't played it yet, imagine a cyberpunk world, neon lights everywhere, and you're a futuristic ninja with a katana. Right off the bat, Ghost Runner hits you with its fast-paced, wall-running, and insane parkour. It's one of those games where you can't help but feel like a total badass, but it also humbles you real quick. One wrong move, and bam, you're dead. But here's the thing, the respawn is immediate, so you're right back at it, trying to perfect your next run. It's super rewarding when you get into that flow state. You'll be slicing through enemies, running on walls, and dodging bullets like a pro, all in one smooth motion. The game is so fluid, and the controls feel tight, which is crucial for a game like this. The setting is equally awesome. It's this gritty, dystopian, cyberpunk city, and the visuals are just eye candy. I couldn't help but get drawn into the atmosphere, the neon, the rain-soaked streets, the towering skyscrapers. It feels like you're in the middle of a futuristic action movie, but you're the star doing all these crazy stunts. One thing I have to mention is the soundtrack. Oh, man, the music is fire. Just pure synthwave goodness that pumps you up during every intense sequence. It complements the gameplay so well, and there were moments where I caught myself bobbing my head while dodging bullets. Sure, the game's difficulty can be brutal at times, but that's kind of the point. When you finally nail a level that's been giving you trouble, it's this amazing sense of accomplishment. If you're into fast-paced action, and you're not afraid of a bit of trial and error, this one's a must-play. Next we have Dead Island 2. It's one of those games that after being in development for so long, you're just happy it finally exists. If you're into zombie games, this one is like a bloody sun-soaked vacation, where you can let loose and hack, slash, and smash your way through hordes of the undead. What's cool about it is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. The game knows exactly what it is, a fun, over-the-top zombie slasher set in sunny California. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. First off, the setting is great. Instead of a gloomy, post-apocalyptic wasteland, Dead Island 2 takes place in a colorful, almost absurdly beautiful version of Los Angeles. They call it Hell A, and the contrast between the bright, glamorous world of Hollywood and the grotesque, decaying zombies is just awesome. You're running through luxury mansions, beaches, and fancy neighborhoods, all while the city crumbles around you. It's like you're on a demented version of a sightseeing tour. The zombies themselves come in all shapes and sizes, and they're not pushovers. You've got your standard walkers, but there are also faster, more aggressive types, like runners and screamers who can call for reinforcements. Some are armored, others are on fire or covered in acid, and each type forces you to adjust your tactics. It keeps you on your toes and makes the combat feel fresh. You're constantly adapting and finding new ways to take them down, whether it's by using environmental traps, setting them on fire, or just going for headshots. Overall, Dead Island 2 is just a good time. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel, but it doesn't need to. Next we have Atomic Heart, Trapped in Limbo DLC. If you thought the base game was a wild ride with its retro, futuristic chaos and unpredictable twists, then buckle up, because this DLC takes things into a whole new realm of experimentation and survival. Trapped in Limbo drops you into a fragmented, almost dreamlike scenario. It's not your typical open-world exploration anymore. Instead, you're thrown into a confined, eerie space where survival and adaptability become your top priorities. The game doesn't hold your hand, it just points you toward the chaos and says, good luck figuring this out. And honestly, that's part of the charm. The gameplay in this DLC is where it really shines. It leans heavily into puzzle solving and environmental exploration. Think of it as less run and gun, and more stop, think, and figure out how to not get shredded by whatever that is. Every room you enter feels like it has a purpose, whether it's testing your reflexes, challenging your problem-solving skills, or just messing with your head. And trust me, the game loves to mess with your head. One of the coolest things about Trapped in Limbo is how it plays with your expectations. Just when you think you've got a handle on things, the game throws in a curveball. Whether it's a new mechanic, an unexpected challenge, or just an unsettling moment that makes you stop and wonder, what is happening here? It keeps you on your toes in the best way possible. Combat, of course, makes a return, but it feels more strategic this time around. Next we have Watch Dogs Legion. This game really took the whole open-world hacking thing to another level. The first thing that hit me was the setting, London. And not just any version of London, but this near-future dystopian London where everything is under heavy surveillance, and the government is basically a dictatorship. The way they captured the city, though, it's spot on. From Big Ben to Camden Market, every corner of London feels alive, and it's just cool to explore this iconic city in a way you've never seen before. But the real hook for Legion? It's got to be that play as anyone system. Like, literally anyone you see walking down the street, you can recruit into your squad. I remember at first I thought, okay, but surely this is just a gimmick, right? Nope. You actually build a team of characters, and each one has their own backstory, abilities, and quirks. I had this old lady on my team. Seriously, a grandma. And she was walking around, slow as anything, but she had some tech skills that were unbeatable. There's just something hilarious about seeing her take down an enemy in the most casual way possible. And that's what's fun about it. Everyone you recruit adds something different to your team, and it makes you think about how you approach missions. You could be rolling with a construction worker who can call in a cargo drone to fly over buildings, or a spy with a silenced pistol and a fancy sports car. And of course, Legion is all about that hacking life. You're controlling drones, hijacking cars, hacking cameras, all with a few button presses. It's just as slick as ever. Next we have Still Wakes the Deep. At first, I wasn't sure what to expect. An oil rig in the middle of the ocean doesn't exactly scream horror, right? But once I started playing, I realized how wrong I was. It nails that sense of isolation and dread right from the beginning. The setting is perfect for a game like this. You're stuck on this creaky, unstable structure, surrounded by nothing but endless water. It gives you this eerie, sinking feeling, pun intended, that something horrible is going to happen. The atmosphere is what really grabbed me. From the second you step onto that rig, you can feel the tension. Everything is dark and claustrophobic, with narrow hallways, low ceilings, and machinery clanking all around you. The sound of the ocean crashing against the metal walls is always there, adding this constant layer of anxiety. Every time I turned a corner, I half expected something to jump out. And while the game definitely delivers on scares, it's the psychological tension that kept me on edge. The whole premise is pretty cool too. You play as one of the workers on the rig, just a regular guy, and it makes the experience feel more grounded. You're not some action hero with a gun. You're just trying to survive and figure out what's happening. The game does an amazing job of slowly building up the mystery. You start hearing strange noises, seeing things out of the corner of your eye, and the rig itself feels like it's coming alive. It really gets in your head. The story is mysterious, and I loved uncovering the truth little by little. Next we have Thief. Fans of the original Thief games loved the deep stealth mechanics and immersive world building, but when the 2014 version came out, it got a lot of flack from longtime fans and critics alike. People felt it didn't capture the spirit of the originals, and there were complaints about the clunky controls, linear level design, and a story that didn't quite hit the mark. One of the big issues was how it handled the stealth mechanics. In the older Thief games, you had more freedom to approach situations in different ways, and it felt very open-ended. But with this reboot, many players felt like it was more restrictive, with levels that funneled you into specific paths. That loss of freedom didn't sit well with fans who loved the open-ended, creative gameplay of the original series. On top of that, some of the AI was criticized for being too predictable or outright dumb at times, which kind of broke the immersion for a stealth-focused game. But here's the thing, if you step back and take Thief 2014 for what it is, it's actually a pretty solid stealth game. It's atmospheric, the dark, gritty world of the city is really well designed, and when the stealth mechanics click, it's super satisfying. Sneaking around, looting treasures, and staying in the shadows can be pretty immersive if you're not too worried about how it compares to the originals. Plus, visually, the game looks great. The attention to detail in the environments and the lighting effects really help to set the mood. The sound design is also a big highlight. Using sound to your advantage or avoiding noisy surfaces makes the stealth feel more intense. Next we have Vampire. It's one of those titles where you go in expecting a typical vampire action game, but it turns out to be so much deeper than that. It's got this dark, moody atmosphere that just pulls you in right from the start. You play as Dr. Jonathan Reed, this dude who's a respected doctor, but also just became a vampire. So, right off the bat, you're hit with this major moral conflict. He's a healer, but now he's cursed with this bloodlust. It's such a cool dynamic because you're constantly torn between doing what's right and giving in to your vampire instincts. I don't know about you, but I loved the tension that creates in the gameplay. Every time you meet someone, you're like, do I help them or do I eat them? That's one of the most interesting parts of the game, the choice to feed or not. The more you feed on people, the stronger you get, but it comes with some serious consequences. The game doesn't just let you be a monster without repercussions. If you kill too many civilians, whole districts can fall into chaos, and you end up ruining your own world. But then again, if you don't feed, you're weaker, and the game becomes more challenging. I remember thinking, man, do I really want to sacrifice this person for a quick power boost? It really makes you consider every move. The combat is actually pretty fun too. It's got that hack and slash feel, but with some cool vampire powers thrown in. It's got that perfect mix of action, storytelling, and moral dilemmas that keep you hooked. Plus, who doesn't want to live out their vampire fantasy, right? Next we have The Quarry. Now this is one of those games that really nails that interactive horror movie vibe. If you're a fan of games like Until Dawn, you'll feel right at home with this one. It's got all the classic horror tropes, teens stuck in the woods, creepy atmosphere, and a ton of choices that can make or break the story. What I immediately loved about The Quarry is how cinematic it feels. It's like you're watching a 90s slasher flick, but you get to control what happens. The graphics are top-notch, and the character models look almost lifelike. Sometimes I'd forget I was playing a game because it feels like you're directing your own horror movie. The voice acting is also solid, with a great cast, including some familiar faces like David Arquette. I think that adds to the charm because you feel like you're watching a real cast play out this insane story. And let me tell you, the story can go in wild directions depending on your choices. Every decision you make matters, from dialogue options to how you handle certain situations. Are you going to be the hero and save everyone? Or is your character going to make a dumb horror movie mistake and end up dead? It's totally up to you. The branching narrative is a big part of the fun because it keeps you guessing, and you can play it multiple times to see how different choices play out. One of the coolest parts about The Quarry is the setting. It's this rundown summer camp in the woods, and the way the game builds tension is masterful. At first, everything seems normal, maybe a little too quiet, but as night falls, things start getting weird. Next we have The Sinking City. It's one of those games that totally pulls you into its weird, Lovecraftian atmosphere. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect going in. I knew it had that detective vibe, but once I started playing, I realized it's so much more than just a mystery game. The setting is such a huge part of what makes it special. Oakmont, the flooded city you're stuck in, feels like a character itself. It's dark, twisted, and so mysterious. The whole city has this oppressive vibe, like it's barely holding itself together. And then you throw in all the supernatural stuff. You're constantly on edge, wondering what the heck is going on. It's the kind of place where even the NPCs feel off. They're all a little too weird, you know? The detective mechanics are super satisfying, too. It's not like most games where you just follow a waypoint and the answers are handed to you. You actually have to think in this game. You've got to piece together clues, figure out where to go next, and sometimes that means wandering around, checking your map, and just solving things on your own. I found myself getting so immersed in the investigations because it feels like you're the one figuring it all out, not just the game spoon-feeding you answers. One thing I really appreciated was the freedom in how you handle investigations. You're given choices that affect the outcome, and there's not always a right answer. I remember one case where I had to decide whether to trust this cult or expose them, and both options felt equally shady. It's that kind of moral ambiguity that really makes you think, and I love that.